Not everyone holding up a legacy wears boots every day. Some do it from behind a laptop 2 states away, keeping the books clean and the cattle fed while raising a family and renovating a 1919 farmhouse into an agritourism destination. Today's guest proves you don't have to be on the ranch to be part of it. So, Mary Kate, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. It's fun to be on this side of the podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a new one for us. And I'm glad you're on here because you have a unique story that I really want to expose. Because I know there's a lot of folks out there, that went off, got an education, maybe started a career, got married, maybe moved to a different part of the country. And they have an operation that they want to be a part of, but it's not traditional. And as we go through the show, I want to really hone in on that. So you're part of a family ranch that's been running since 1903. What does it look like to contribute when you're not the one in the saddle every day?
I don't know that I have a job title, as we know with a lot of family operations, but since no one's here to argue with me, I'll say that I've taken on that role of business manager for our
Sure.
operation. And I work alongside our ranch manager, and he's also a business partner of ours. And then, of course, my mom is the sole owner of the ranch. So she still has some say in it.
Hmm.
Um, but I was able to step in and we had a change of leadership. And so I was behind that. But day to day, I was thinking about this and I thought, I couldn't have done this 20 years ago. I couldn't have done this 15 years ago because
Sure.
the only reason why I am still able to be a part of the ranch is because of technology. And what I do day to day working alongside a ranch manager is a lot of FaceTime calls, text messages, screenshots, shared Google spreadsheets, and all those things that allow me to still be a part of our family legacy and be a part of that operation. So, really, I'm a business manager. I make sure leases get turned in, drought payments get turned in, everybody's lined up and reconciled, and everything just keeps running how I can on my end.
I think it's interesting. There's a lot of operations that are in this space where, we've got something that's long time established. And it's not that you wouldn't like to come back home, but home has changed, as we go through college. Maybe we take a job off the farm and then we get married. Maybe you move somewhere totally different. And forever, it was always viewed that you had to come back to the farm and abandon everything that you've built, from a network where your kids go to school to, maybe you've got a business that's established of some sort. And I find it really cool that you've embraced this because there was and I'll have to find the quote, but it was, the roots of the ranch are not there to hold you down, but the roots of the ranch are to help you expand and grow. And I
Mhm.
think that's where you're at now, is in that expansion and growing side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so how did you first find your footing, supporting the ranch afar? It had to have some conversations before you actually went down this road. And I'm sure there were some naysayers in the bunch.
It actually happened out of necessity. To give you kind of the background, my grandfather was the last one to really work full time on the
Uh-huh.
ranch, and he passed away in the early 90s. And from there, we had a neighboring family that came in and said that they would help with the ranch, and they took over some things for a few years with my grandmother, my great aunt, and my mom as like the bosses, right?
Sure.
And so that went on for a really long time, and life goes on. I went to college and got a degree and moved and got married and started my family. And I got a call one day from the gentleman that was running our ranch, and he was getting older and his health was not doing well. And he expressed that he just wasn't able to help any longer, but he wanted to see if we were open to having his daughter and his son in law step in. And this is one of those things that I'm really glad I was quick on my feet that day
Sure.
because I said, you know what? Could they come to us with a proposal of what they want that new partnership to look like and send it
Yep.
to us and let's talk about it. Because we were changing hands. So I thought this is an opportunity to let's change things up. Is this the best option for us? Again, one of those things that I'm very, very thankful for that my mom didn't just sign it. She let me read it, the proposal,
Yeah.
and it was not for us. It
Sure.
was not for us. So we were essentially back to square one. I politely declined that was not something that we could do moving forward. And my husband and I just started racking our brains. He has an ag background and, has a lot of knowledge in that, but still we're in Texas and our ranch is in Arizona. We are very established in Texas. His family's been here for 7 or 8 generations. We're not moving anytime soon.
Sure.
So how could we still help that ranch move forward? I ended up calling a childhood friend. I grew up with him. He's in my hometown. He comes from a long line of ranchers and he actually works at the NRCS office. And
Uh-huh.
side note, I worked at the NRCS office when I was in high school, interned in their state office in college. So I already had a connection there. And I went to him and just said, "Look, we're in a bind. I need help. Do you know of anybody? Do you have any ideas? What should I do? Because I'm here. I can't move there. Do you
Yep.
know of anybody that we could call that might want to work with us?" We talked through a few things and he said, "You know what? Let me think on it and I'll get back to you if I hear anything." He ends up calling a few days later and he says, "Look, my wife and I want to partner with you guys. We want to help.
Mhm.
This is great. Your ranch is on the way to town. I drive by it every day on the way to the office. This is something that we're really passionate about. He's known me forever. He's a lifelong friend." He said, "We want to be a part of it." So we ended up coming up with a cost and profit share
Okay.
partnership. We felt like that was our best option when we couldn't micromanage,
Sure.
essentially. We're
Sure.
2 states away. We needed a scheme where he had skin in the game, so it's to his advantage to make sure the ranch is profitable,
Yep.
costs are kept down, treat it like his own because
Yep.
essentially, it is in a way.
Yeah.
So we got started with him and it was really from the ground up. We basically just said, assess the ranch, see what you want to do, changes we need to make. Let's put a game plan together. And that was all she wrote.
Mary Kate, I want to go back just a little bit because I think a lot of our listeners are going to be interested in this. The first proposal that you got, what did you not like about it?
To be perfectly honest, I didn't like that the way it was written. So, to backtrack, our ranch is composed of deeded land, state grazing leases, and BLM. So, essentially, their proposal not only asked for a lot of upfront costs that weren't necessary, but we would essentially be signing those leases away to them.
Gotcha. Yep.
And so we would not only not have a herd, we would have lost the majority of our ranch just out from underneath us. So
So
that's
very,
why it
very
wasn't for us.
one-sided in the way that it was written.
Yes, yes. And it wasn't any way that would protect our assets, protect what we've had for 120 years.
Just so our listeners can understand, because we've got a lot of new listeners. We've got a lot of, new to the business farmers, ranchers that are trying to work deals out. If you had to give them one bit of advice, what would you say when they're trying to put these agreements together and approaching landowners?
Look at it from their perspective. Really put yourself in their shoes. I think a big reason why we went with Chase is because he really saw the situation we were in, that
Sure.
I couldn't be there. My brother and sister were not in a place that they could be there. My mother was not in a place where she could be there. So it was fair. It was very fair to both parties, where both parties were going to benefit from it and both parties were safe as far as legalities, risk, all those things. I think really just making sure both sides are balanced and you're looking at it from their perspective and you're not looking like you're taking advantage of their situation.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I've looked at so many of these proposals where they want to approach a landowner. And I always try any landowner I'm trying to negotiate with, or maybe they have an established operation. We're going to just basically take over everything. Um, I want to make sure that they feel comfortable and that that's all communicated, because it is, yes, agriculture's tough as it is anyway. My margins are thin, but we've got to look at it on both sides of the angle, because they've got the biggest asset that we need. If I'm a cattleman and I'm trying to work a deal on a ranch in New Mexico or Arizona or wherever, like, I've got to be able to make sure that I'm, one, protecting their asset, two, they're getting adequately the revenue share that's coming off of that. I'm not hamstringing myself, but yet I'm also providing a revenue stream for them. And I think it's hard. And sometimes a lot of our folks are a little more rigid and they're a little bit guarded and protected, thinking somebody's going to mess them over. And I think that is a big part. There's trust issues that need to be worked through. And sometimes I think they need to stop from an expansion standpoint until they get those issues together, because there has to be a level of trust, or it's not worth you guys doing business together.
Because there's so many things you've got to be able to trust that person on everyday decisions.
Yeah.
You've got
Yeah.
to trust that they have your best interest. And that's why we felt like that arrangement was the best option for us, because
Sure.
our best interests are his best interests. Because if the ranch succeeds, he succeeds. If the ranch does not, he does not.
Yep. Yep. I love that. That's something that I think a lot of folks need to really hone in on in agriculture, because I think this is going to be a bigger problem, in the future, as I'm going to call it middle America, plains. We have more people that have moved out into the fringes and have successful careers, and they can afford, they don't want to get rid of the asset because there's some sentimental value to it, but they may not live there.
Hmm.
And there's going to be more of those agreements, in my opinion, in the next 10 years in agriculture. So you mentioned managing drought payments and grazing leases. What have you learned about navigating the business side of ag?
A couple things. One, about the drought payments and things, don't be lazy. Just fill out the paperwork.
Hmm.
I think that a lot of us don't realize that there are so many resources, tools, help, advice, guidance that is there to help us be successful.
Yep.
And I think in ag, we all know that there are lots of things that are very unpredictable and we have no control over. So things like a drought payment, if that's some paperwork I have to fill out that helps us get through a bad year and can keep that 120-year operation going, you need to do it. When I
Absolutely.
think back to my days in the NRCS office and even now, even sitting down with a range con and coming up with a game plan to improve your rangeland health, they have so many resources and things available to you. You need to take advantage of them.
Yep. Totally agree. There's so much stuff out there. And I think it's hard to know what's good and what's bad. And I will say, I love our NRCS and FSA office personnel, but I will tell you, all across the nation, they're not all created equal.
Yeah.
And there are some that know the programs through and through. They know how they impact the farm operations. One, because most of them are farmers and ranchers, some way,
Hmm.
shape, or form. So if you're not getting the service and don't understand what's out there, you might need to check with another county office, the neighboring county office, or talk to your local producers, because you'll find a pattern. I
Yeah.
promise. So you said you and your husband you're in East Texas, and not just East Texas, but you're in deep East Texas. And unless you live in Texas, you don't understand the difference, but there is a difference. Geographically, like, it is probably more similar to Louisiana, as far as we've got pine trees, swamps, you name it. There's alligators over there galore. And I actually spent some time near where Mary Kate lives. Got a good story for you, Mary Kate. So I lived at a house, just an old farmhouse, and I'm in my early 20s, bachelor, work in that area, and I'm new to the area, and people were just so friendly. The food was phenomenal. You were just taken in. I don't know how many people's houses I sat on porches. We did more business on the porch in a rocking chair than ever in town at an office or anything like that. So it was fun. It was a fun time in my life. And I moved, And what was really interesting, one of my friends from down there called and he said, "Hey, you know that house that you lived in? It's it's gone and nobody can figure out where it went." And what was crazy is somebody had actually gone in and lifted that pier and beam house and stole it. And they moved it to their ranch or wherever and remodeled the house. And nobody can find the house. And so, but that is like one of those East Texas stories that you just, you
You
know,
can't make it up. You can't make it up, and let me tell you, it has just been a cultural experience learning how to live in East Texas. There's a lot of things that are different. One, the climate. I grew up in high desert mountains where we get 10 to 12 inches of rain to piney woods that we get 50 to 60 inches of rain.
yeah,
And just for me, I think one of the funniest things, and it took me a minute to realize, I drive around and I kept getting this very uneasy feeling. I would see pastures with cattle and I'm like, something's not right. There are too many cows in that pasture. Like, you got to
yeah,
go. Because
yeah.
I joke where I grew up, our carrying capacity is like one cow per every 10,000 acres, is what I joke, you know?
True. Yeah.
And the carrying capacity out here is a lot different. One of my clients is a grass-fed Angus operation, and, out there, the ranch manager in Arizona, he's like, "That's awful. No, there's no way that tastes good." But out here, they have those coastal Bermudas, and it's just so lush and nutrient rich that, yeah, grass-fed beef does taste pretty good out here.
Yeah. It is such a different world. I absolutely loved it. I had a rice farmer that was down in around Liberty County and right on the coast and he
Mhm.
took me to out around Beaumont, Port Arthur, and there's a lot of you're not far from Louisiana and there's a lot of French influence in the
Mhm.
cuisine. And he took me to a restaurant and the guy was speaking French and very fast and as a North Central Texas guy, like this was a whole new world and I couldn't even read the menu, but we sat there and the guy was talking fast. He looked at me. Obviously, I needed to respond, did not know what or how to respond. And I look at the farmer and he just says, "I'll have the special." And so I don't know what it was. It was good. The guys were making fun of me and teasing me. They were saying that they had cooked some Nutra rats that run around in that Southeast Texas spot, but I'm not going to question it. It was good, and we're going to go
Hey, the
on.
seasoning covers it up. It's fine. It's fine. That's where that cuisine came from. The
It's
the spices were meant to cover up the decay of the meat.
that, yeah. Whatever was going on there, I'm not going to ask about it. It was good.
Yeah. You just don't ask. You can just move on.
Let's move over to what made you want to renovate your grandparents that 1919 home and turn it into something more.
A little backstory with that. When I graduated high school, everybody migrated out of my hometown, and there
Hmm.
wasn't very much left but the ranch. And it always felt weird to me to come home and have to stay in a hotel when
Sure.
you're visiting. So there was always kind of that desire to want to have a home in
Hmm.
Wilcox, and maybe that was building something out at the ranch, maybe that was renovating something. We didn't really know, and my husband loves the area, so he was always a pretty good proponent for that as well.
Sure.
And the opportunity came up. My little hometown has had kind of a rebirth story. When I left, it was a ghost town. There wasn't a lot of industry. Since then, they have put, probably in the last 15 or 20 years, they put in a lot of vineyards. Where we're at, we are ideal for growing grapes, mainly because of the elevation, but then also there's such a temperature variance in any
Hmm.
given day. You could have a 50-degree temperature variance from sun up to sundown.
Sure.
So they put in all these vineyards, but they're wine tasting rooms. So, for perspective, Wilcox is in the very southeastern corner of Arizona. So they put the vineyards in, but then their wine tasting rooms and their kind of front of the house was in Scottsdale and Phoenix. So people would come in, get familiar with the winemaker. They would put in their order. It would get shipped up there. They would pick it up. They found that people liked to go to see the grapes and pick
Sure.
up their wine order in person.
Yeah.
So then they started slowly putting in wine tasting rooms in Wilcox too. And I had been asking my mom, we still had my grandparents' house, she was renting it out. And I had been asking her for years, "Mom, this is going to be something, and your house is literally a block from all the wine tasting rooms. This needs to be like an Airbnb or some kind of business." We were grandfathered in for both commercial and residential zoning where the
Sure.
house is at.
Yep.
And I just kept bugging her, bugging her. She didn't want to do it. So finally, one day, we had talked to our finance guy, and Joseph and I had talked a lot about it. And we approached my mom and said, "Can we just buy the house from you and do it ourselves?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Yes." So we did. And it was really just seeing that opportunity. It was selfish, partly because I wanted a tie back to my hometown.
Yeah.
But really, it was just seeing that opportunity of that growing agritourism and needing to be a part of that and support it.
Agritourism's growing across America in big ways. Like everybody, and it's in places that you don't expect that people are going to go. But it's been really neat to watch some of these operations where maybe they're a traditional corn and soybean farmer, or maybe they're just a traditional commercial cow calf operation, but there's some sort of agritourism revenue. And it's been
Mhm.
fun for me to see business wise all across the US. You know, for you launching the Morehouse, what did it teach you about blending that history with hospitality? Because I feel like it's a total shift in mindset. Not only are you rehabbing the house, setting it up differently, but like you're having to maintain the history that's there and then also create something that's hospitable for your guests that are going to make them keep coming back.
Yeah. My family has actually been in the area since the 1800s. They were headed to California, and the grandma of the group said she had raised 11 kids out of the back of a wagon and she was done, and that's where they were going to stay. So we have been in that area pretty much since the town was founded. So there's a lot of that history and legacy there. And I think it was just that common hospitality of inviting people into your home, welcoming
Sure.
them. I wanted them to see how much I love my hometown and how much I'm proud of it, to see where it's grown. And I think it's just that old feeling of inviting somebody over. What is more of a friendship than having someone into your home? And it
Absolutely.
was an undertaking. Renovating a 100-year-old house 2 states away was very stressful. Not for the faint of heart, but again, it was one of those things where you had to learn to ask for help, and we relied a lot on our friends to pop in and check on things for us. We had a great group of contractors, and it was just bringing that history back because everybody knew my grandparents. They knew that house, so it was continuing that legacy of their home and bringing it back to life. So we went back and put a lot of the original trim back in, restored all the doors, and retained that kind of 1919 aesthetic that we all love. And it was just bringing it back to life, just like my hometown. We're bringing it back to life. It was a booming cattle capital at one point,
Sure.
and so it was just taking that momentum and breathing new life into it.
I love that. And I do think you mentioned something there that I think we all need to take heed in asking for help. It is okay for you to ask for help because if you hadn't either learned that somewhere along the way, one, you wouldn't have done the Morehouse at all. And then you also wouldn't be managing that ranch from afar
Mhm.
because I feel like that is a key thing that it's okay for us to ask for help. And we have a hard time doing that. I feel like.
And, you can ask Brooke this. I'm an Enneagram 1 type A Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to ask for help, that's
Not going to
20
happen.
years of therapy right there.
Oh, my Lord. Let's shift gears, building a life between states. You're married to a seventh generation Texan, which, I mean, we all know us Texans, like, you know, the state may be changing, but it's hard to envision living somewhere else right now. And there may be good states everywhere else. I've traveled all over the US, and there's places I just love. But it is daunting when you think about that. You're raising a family in East Texas, you're running the creative agency, you're still showing up to work cattle in Arizona. What's the glue that holds all of that together?
I think it's just legacy. You can't deny, just our immediate family ranch is 120 years old. And then, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, my family's been there since the 1800s. You can't deny that tie back to the land and that history. You can't buy that. You cannot buy that history and that legacy. And
It
it's so
doesn't have a
special.
monetary value.
No, you can't. You absolutely
Mm-hmm.
can't. And we joke all the time. We get to show up for the fun days when we're working cows and we get to enjoy it that way. But there's a lot that goes on day to day that we're not there hands on, but it's legacy.
Sure.
You can't buy that.
I love that. I think there's a lot of legacy. My brother recently, we've got some family land in North Texas, and he and I were talking about that. And we've played in that creek bottom. We know every nook, cranny, and place to hide. And good luck trying to find us if we needed to escape. Because
Mhm.
but the thing about it, what's cool about that is I tell my kids that story, and we go ride around with my dad down there on the place. And there's some really cool stuff down there, and the kids are asking questions. And we were having a barbecue with my brother, and he and I were talking and telling those stories, and the kids were just eating it up, and they haven't got to experience it, and we take for granted that. I think we're at that phase in life where I want to slow down so that they can experience it, because there's no monetary value that can be put on that when you've got 6 or 7 or 8 generations that have been on one location. Like, that
Mhm.
is really cool.
Yeah.
How do you decide what gets your energy and attention on any given day?
Brooke wrote that question
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
because she daily calls and says, "Can I have the Mary Kate touch on my life? Can you please just come organize my life?"
And that's what I wanted to know, because it is, are you running from one fire to the next, or are you an extremely organized person, um, with multiple spreadsheets and, you know,
The latter. So I am a very organized, very black and white, can see the big picture person. And so I look at things by the week and I don't look at the month. I look at the week. I might look ahead, but
sure,
I look at that week and it's what absolutely has to get done this week. No excuses, no deadline extensions. What has to get done? That creates a priority list. Then from there, every single day, what absolutely has to be done today? And what can I slide off till tomorrow? What can I slide off till next week? What can I say no to? It's all about staying organized, setting priorities. And I think a lot of people have trouble with truly knowing what is the top priority. They
sure.
just see all this stuff on their list. And I do think it is a skill to be able to go in and know exactly what has to have your attention first.
So I think it's always hard. You look at this big list, and what was always told to me, like, the only way you can eat an elephant is just one bite at a time. And I think it really is. I had a podcast with Wesley Thorpe, and Wesley's at the top of his game in the team roping world, been in the NFR and all that good stuff. And he and I were talking about this, and the thing is allowing yourself little wins. And I think a lot of times for us, we look at these big daunting tasks, winning the world at the NFR, but he even breaks it down into small wins, and he's
Mhm.
got a path, and it may be 25 things that he's got to accomplish in order to get to the world finals. And no different than us. We look at all these tasks, and I think we have to give ourselves wins along the way, little ones.
Mhm.
That little win stacks up, and you get 10 of those in a day, and it's like, you know what? I actually made some difference. I got some things accomplished.
Yeah.
And
There's nothing that I love more than crossing things off my list. And
yeah,
I can go back and look at my planner and I can see everything I've done that day and I can see all those check marks and it's, yeah, you were productive today. You did a lot. Pat myself on the back.
with ADHD, sometimes that's tough for me. You got all these things, and you sit here and you're like all over the place.
Oh
But
yeah, our brains are wired very differently. What works for me doesn't work for someone else, but I'm pretty
Yeah,
good at putting things in boxes and organizing. That's what's going to get my attention till I get this task done, and then I can move on to the next
sh-
one.
sure. I love it. So, like we talked about family legacy earlier, and how do you how do you want your kids to experience this? 'Cause you've got a different lifestyle than what you were raised with you guys having life in two places. Um, but what does that look like for your kids, and how are you bringing them up?
It's really fun for me because you've lived where I live now. My husband's family's been here for a long time, and
Mhm.
they're a well-known family, and I joke that he's a local celebrity. Everybody knows him, everybody knows his family and his history. He's got a wonderful, unique family history, and we always are hearing about it. And we're on the land and we're seeing it and we're seeing the
Yep.
family all the time. But when we go to Arizona, it's the complete opposite. In East Texas, I'm the stranger. I'm the one who married in. Nobody really knows who I am. But
Sure.
in Arizona, Joseph is the stranger. Nobody knows him, and he loves that. And so he's making friends with the guys at the Ace Hardware and the antique
Yeah.
store. Like he loves that he's the stranger. But I think it's fun to see for our kids to see, and they're going to be 9 and 11, so
Uh-huh.
they're little still. It's fun for them to see that mom has a cool history too.
Sure.
Mom has a really cool family history too, and so I say that selfishly. I think my family's history is more fun, but I could
Yeah.
just be biased. But I think it's letting them see that, and I think that sometimes when you do have that disconnect,
Mhm.
one side of the family's legacy gets lost a little
Sure.
bit, 'cause you're gonna be more absorbed in the family that's closest by, the proximity.
Mhm.
So I think it's fun for me to let them see that, let them live it. They feel like they're honorary Wilcox citizens and that's their home. And it's
That's
fun to
good.
see them get immersed in that and see mom's side.
Yeah. I like that. I do. And they get to see that communities are different all over and that, wherever you land, like you can create whatever your destiny is. And it may not be in Wilcox and it may not be in East Texas. And who knows? It's
Yeah.
crazy when we get to looking at it. I think sometimes we limit ourselves as far as where we can go and where the opportunity is.
Yeah. And exactly on that point, I want them to know, I think sometimes people have that fear of going somewhere else and doing something
Yeah.
different. And I literally went to my parents one day and said, "I think I'm gonna go to Oklahoma State for college."
Uh huh.
And of course, my dad quipped and said, "How do you expect to pay for it?" And I said, "Actually, I got a tuition waiver and I got some scholarships, so it's gonna be cheaper for me to go to OSU than it is for me to stay here." And he said, "Let's pack your car." Let's go. But my kids seeing that I did. I took off and I went to a whole nother state that I didn't know
Hmm.
and I didn't know anyone. And I built this life and I didn't know anybody in Livingston, but I moved out here anyways. I want them to know that they can go anywhere. They can do anything. I don't want them to feel like they're being held back out of fear or obligation or whatever it is. The sky's the limit and I want them to go do it and chase their dreams.
Yeah, I love that. I do because that's the thing is we've heard it a lot, and I think we're going to continue. But being able to manage from afar, like you said, technology is a heck of a thing that's allowed us. You couple that with relationship building and communication, and you literally can tackle the world.
Mhm.
And I think that is one of the things that we have. It's a luxury we have now. So, well, giving advice for others that are supporting from afar. For someone who wants to stay connected to their rural roots but doesn't live there anymore, where can they start?
I think looking for the gaps. Look for the opportunities, see what is missing, where there's a need. Obviously, in my situation, that was a pretty big gap. That was a pretty
Mhm.
big need that we
Mhm.
had to step in and figure out a game plan for. But it might be something as simple as you're going to be in charge of making sure XYZ paperwork is filed every year, or
Mhm.
you're going to be in charge of if we have a working, you're going to call the guys and make sure they can be there or call and see who can help get them scheduled out. It's the easiest things that you may not even think of, but you're still contributing, you're still helping. I think it's just finding those little gaps and needs and or asking, saying, "What can I take off your plate? What is something that I could help with that you don't have time for or that I can step in and be a part of?" And it might be something very surprising or something that you feel is small, but it's not. It's helping the
Hmm.
greater good, the whole operation. So I wouldn't think that I think also is don't think that you have to go in and do it all or you have to run the whole operation. You can still be such a significant part of it, even if it's one task.
Sure. So, how do you handle the tensions, between tradition and change, especially as roles evolve across the generations? Now, I think this is a big one because, you know, we've got the matriarch, patriarch that have been there, done that for the last 50 to 70 years. As you evolve into those different generational moves, like how do you navigate that world?
I think for us, we had a little bit different situation. I think, I did have some roadblocks when other family members were still in charge. But when we started this partnership with Chase, it really was a clean slate. And Chase is my age. So
Hmm.
we're not really dealing with an older generation because we were starting a clean slate with us. And yes, we have my mother, but for the most part, she just says, whatever you kids think is best.
Yep.
We are very, very fortunate where she just says, I trust you guys, whatever you think is best. So we don't really have that continued tension with an older generation, but I will say that we are doing things a lot differently than the older generation. And that's things something so simple as it's not simple, but something like the older generation, they hauled water almost every day. We don't do that anymore. We put in a pipeline
Sure.
and we've solved that. We have a controlled breeding program that looks a lot different now. Our bloodline looks a little bit different now. So instead of just hauling calves off to the auction every year like they always did for generations and generations, Chase found a buyer that wanted a little bit of a tweak in our genetics, and we were able to get a premium. So
Hmm.
it was like looking for new opportunities. Yes, we did have to tweak some things genetics wise, but we're making more money. It is something different, but
Sure.
it's just little opportunities like that and not just doing the same old things that we've always done. But like I said,
Hmm.
we don't really have the tensions. We have the free reign to do it. But yes, we are doing things a little bit differently than previous generations.
How has this evolved? Maybe your leadership style, you know, especially on things it doesn't require you being on horseback or whatever the case may be. But I feel like this has probably evolved a little bit in the way that you handle things from a leadership standpoint. Like, what could you shed some light on that, maybe?
I'm the youngest of the family, so typically the baby of the family isn't the one stepping out in front of the crowd and kind of
Sure.
taking things. And I think it's just not feeling like you have to have a certain role because that's the way it was or what's expected. If you see a need and you have that desire there, step up. Just step up to the plate and take charge. You can't wait around for somebody else to do it. And you can't wait around and just expect that it's going to get taken care of for you because you might end up with a really bad scenario or a really bad partnership proposal that would mess you up in the long run. So I think it's don't be complacent. You need to step up, take charge, and don't expect somebody else to do it.
Absolutely. I love that. Whether you're working cattle or working spreadsheets, you're part of the operation. And Mary Kate reminds us that legacy is the long game. And sometimes the best contributions happen off the ranch. Follow along at the Morehouse. And if you're ever in Arizona, maybe go ahead and book a stay where history meets hospitality. Mary Kate, thank you for being on the show. And is there anywhere that they can find you to book?
Yes, we are on Airbnb, VRBO. or you can book directly with us. We are members of the Chamber of Commerce and all of that, so you can find us through that. You can find us through the Wine Coalition. We're everywhere.
Awesome. I may have to check it out. Wilcox, Arizona. May have to make a stop.
Might need to be a little getaway for you and Holly.
I'm thinking about it. I'm gonna have to check this out. Interesting. I like history. I like architecture from back then. It's really neat to think about how the construction and everything happened. Guys, be good or be good at it.